We call in creator energy, that ubiquitous consciousness within and around all things visible and invisible. Let's see it as the creative force that it is. When this is cognized, we can then knowingly take responsibility with our intentions to create this day as you imagine it. Directed by our thoughts and feelings, we are in the driver's seat, steering our day and our way in a direction of our choosing. We are that powerful in our consciousness. Collective consciousness further emphasizes our reality, and it is why truth and truth-telling and proper cognition is so critically important. What if, by closing your eyes, the singular you could create what you see as a perfect reality in a perfect world? What would you create with that phenomenal power? What would it look like? How would it feel? By doing this exercise, you have just laid in, as in voted for, a positive layer of reality. Multiply that for our assembly, our tribe, and our like-minded community. Then, still with eyes closed, think about the many among us in our families, our friends, our loved ones, and our communities who hold a very different perception of reality, who may be troubled, who may want things very different from what you want. Having seen them in your mind, now drop into your heart and send them love and compassion. Correct any notion of them being right or wrong. Just send each of them the tremendous love you feel in this very moment, and set your intention for that powerful positive emotion to be showered on them all day. Done daily, imagine how the power of love and truth can break through their conceptions and misperceptions. No matter how extreme their programming or deceptions, love and truth will discharge hostilities and allow their spirit to relax and accept, to shift and change. There is this magic in the air. We can feel it with our eyes closed. We can use that magic by setting our intentions for the highest good, fueled simply by tapping into the love of our beloved Prime Creator. And in doing so, we are doing our part to change our worlds for the better. And so it is.
Thank you, Charlie.
My pleasure.
Good morning. My name's Ron Vroman. I'm the old white man talking head for the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. I looked up some information this morning. Luckily, I found it in my computer. It's old. Back in 2020, that's when I was using an office machine that was black and white and didn't show the thumbprints in red. But Tanya or Charlie has the original, so this is regarding oaths. We're in the process now of dealing with 36 sheriffs on Oregon that do not have a proper oath. And I thought, the Oregon State Police is a bogus organization brought forth by Article 7 amended. It has no authority, no lawful authority, totally bogus. And they're part of the same organization that did homicide on Robert Lavoy Finicum. And the other organization that assisted the Oregon State Police in that homicide was the FBI. And on September 17th, 2020, pardon me, Billy J. Williams, U.S. Attorney on Oregon, Ren Cannon, FBI agent in charge on Portland, and Russell E. Berger, U.S. Marshal on Oregon, as names they are known by, or the lawfully appointed counsel, you have 7, 14, and 21 days to comply or default 3 times and be in contempt and acquiesce to the claims to be used as evidence. And we haven't brought this evidence before the grand jury yet. We have brought the evidence that 1000 Southwest 3rd, the Marco Hatfield building, is unlawful, illegal, and illegitimate. And we served the papers on them so they know. But we served these papers on the FBI, U.S. Marshals, and the U.S. DOJ. The claim: Billy, Wren, and Russell all refused to identify themselves as required by their governing law. Misprision of felony, simulating a legal act, fraud, RICO, obfuscation, they have refused multiple times. That must be explained. Their governing law and penalties must be complied with. The claim: the Marco Hatfield building is not a federal building on federal land. That does not comply with the United States of America's Constitution circa 1819 through 1860 and Oregon's Constitution circa 1859. Their governing law and penalties must be complied with. For example, 18 U.S.C. 3571 due process violations, $250,000 for every violation, and personal and institutional. We claim fraud, simulating illegal action, violation of due process, including violation of the McCarran-Walters Act. It is suspected this is systematic and systemic, and invoke RICO and bring the private attorney generals into this for class action on several constitutional violations. So we have another one here. For the U.S. Veterans Administration, Portland, Oregon. Darwin Goodspeed, Michael J. Murphy, Michael Missall, David Sulkin, Gregory Heaton. That was because they decided that I had to wear a mask, and if I didn't wear a mask, they were going to do something to me, and they did. Arrested, put in a cell, written up. They wrote me up 3 citations, several $100s worth of fines, and threw me out of the VA, excluded me, a veteran, excluded from the VA because I wouldn't wear their mask. And the other one here, for the Postal Service, there's 2 post offices. It's U.S. Post Office and U.S. Postal Service. One's a .gov and one's a .com. And you don't know which one you're dealing with, and you don't know whether the postmaster's a U.S. Postal Service or a U.S. Post Office postmaster. In any case, all three of these entities and all of these named people have been notified and they have acquiesced and they know that we're going to take action against them. When is the only question. So I looked these up so we could get a grasp on exactly where we are and what we're doing. There's been some action by some people back east. Love what they're doing. They're getting people out of the situation of dealing with the federal law enforcement system that's not law, it's color law. And they're doing it by confrontation and letter. They make it so hot on the federal court system that the federal court system finds a way to cut them loose. Just like they did with the Bundys in Vegas. The Bundys in Portland were found not guilty and taken from Portland to Vegas to be tried again. And they found a way to dismiss the case in Vegas. I don't have all the details, and I've spoken to Ryan Bundy on this, Ammon and Cliven too, and it seems they're reluctant to try and put their finger on exactly how it happened and why it happened that they were cut loose in Vegas. I think it was Ryan Bundy, who was sui juris in his own name, standing for himself without representation, but presenting himself in front of that court. And when he turned his paperwork in, they decided it would be better to find a way not to have that paperwork part of the record. And so they figured out a way to get rid of it. And they dismissed it. But they have not dismissed their actions against the Bundys. Although it appears Ammon is the one that's catching hell mostly. Cliven and his ranch in Nevada has pretty much been out of it. I watch what they're doing on YouTube, and it seems like they're running a cattle operation and staying out of the sights of those that would wish them harm. The BLM, Bureau of Land Management, and those folks. Ammon has suffered tremendously. Ryan seems to be staying out of the crosshairs. But the only way that people get a win in a federal court is when they would prefer that the information not become public, part of the record, and they find a way to get rid of the case, kick it down the road. That takes care of one of us. And they do one of us all the time and they have lots of federal district courts that are Article 1 courts, not Article 3 courts. And we have to find a way to show the rest of the several states, the 32 and 17 territories, that you can't do this without doing all of the work. We figured out how to do the work on Oregon. When we were doing this, we didn't know how to do this. We were stumbling along in the dark, learning a little bit at a time. I look at the paperwork and I see how much we've learned. A tremendous amount. And we have to pass that along to the other states and territories. You cannot do it alone. You have to do it for yourself, and nobody can do it for you. But you can't do it alone. By myself, I can't do it. I have filed papers into the US DOJ and with state, county, and city, and it doesn't work. The papers get filed, but it doesn't work. But when I form a social compact, I'm no longer by myself. I'm not doing it alone. And that's what has to happen on all the rest of these states. I have found that the majority of those people actively working to bring forth the proper government and get rid of this governance that we have, I have found that all, and if it's not all, it's damn close, are in the business of helping people stay out of jail, not lose their property, learn how to cope with the de facto color of law, criminal organizations that we're dealing with, from municipal all the way to federal, and every step in between. We know that the 36 sheriffs on Oregon are all without an oath. And I looked up this paperwork because we knew back in 2020 that the DOJ department head, the attorney for the feds on Oregon, his name was Billy J. Williams. He had no oath. He refused to provide us with his bona fides. At the same time, Ren Cannon, FBI agent in charge, was in the same place. He had no oath, no authority. And Russell E. Berger, a former sheriff. Now, if we know that all 36 sheriffs that we've have talked to, and it's many more than 36, because in the last, since 2017, the office of sheriff has been changed several times on Oregon. Here's a little known fact. I found this when I was researching sheriffs. The way they change sheriffs is the sheriff, such as Pat Garrett, sheriff on Washington County for 8 years or more. He didn't just quit. When he quit, they had another deputy sheriff in line, female this time, and they appoint her sheriff. And when the election comes, she's incumbent. And the incumbent almost always wins. So in my studies, looking at all of this, only one time, and that was in Bend, Deschutes County, the sheriff resigned. They put in a new sheriff, and they had an election, and the incumbent did not win. The chief of police for Bend ran for sheriff, and he won. Sheriff for 4 years, and then the one that they wanted to have elected was elected, and the former chief of police of Bend and the former Deschutes County sheriff left the county. Last I heard, he was still on Oregon. But they pass it down, and they've only failed once that I know of. And all the times that the sheriff's office has been changed, in all of the time that we've had sheriffs since 1910, only one time did their plan not win. And we're supposed to have elections. And this was way before there was anything to do with the Dominion, I think it is. Yeah, I think that's it. Machines that we have on Oregon. One of our founders, Ray Sinkle, bless you, Ray. He's recovering from a stroke, his second one. Years ago, he was on the Washington County Elections Committee or Commission. He has a double E. Used to work in all the major electronic companies on Oregon and Washington and out into the Pacific, working for the incorporated governance until he found out about it. Then he stopped doing that. But he was on the election committee, and he was in charge of the computers that were counting the ballots. And they were counting ballots, and his director came to him and says, "Ray, you can shut down the counting." Ray said, "Well, we're not done counting yet." And he was told, "Yes, but we have a statistical answer. And we believe that this is the results, so we're not going to count anymore. You can shut it down. And if somebody doesn't like it and they want to have a recount, they can pay for it. But we're done." And so Ray did that and quit. No longer volunteered for or was involved in the elections because he knew it was bogus. And this was years ago. Ray knew way before. When I got out of jail in 2017 for not having a driver's license and not being smart enough to beat them in their own court, which I'm not, I've proven that several times. So anyhow, I got out, and 4 of us soon swole up to 6 of us. We formed the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. And when we got out, or when I got out, 3 of us went downtown to the US DOJ at 1000 Southwest 3rd Street. And I was such a pain in the bottom to the US DOJ Oregon, the marshals, the FBI, and the sheriffs at that time, that the Oregon State Department of Justice assigned an investigator to me, Jim Anderson. So whenever I wanted to talk to the Oregon DOJ, I talked to Jim. Jim came and visited us. Richard, Ross, and I met with him twice, talked to him on the phone several times. We also went downtown to Southwest 3rd, and there was a U.S. attorney there named Seth Urim, and he was assigned to me. Didn't want to lose track of this old man. So we would go down there once a week. We had a whole stack of things to go over with them, such as Article 7 amended, and how in the hell did that happen? We were told that that was a state problem and the feds were not going to help us on that. But Seth was the attorney that we dealt with. And when we went in to meet him the first time, Seth looked at Ray and says, "I know you." And Ray said, "Oh, yeah." And he says, "Yeah, you were in the audience when we tried a guy, I think his name was Miles. We tried a guy for tax evasion, and you were in the audience." And that was several years before. And Seth knew Ray from Ray being in the audience of a trial years before. The people we're dealing with are not stupid. They're committed. I talked to Seth several times. We went down to see him to drain the local swamp while Donald John Trump was busy draining the swamp in Washington, which he didn't get done. But we haven't been able to drain the swamp on Oregon either. We know it's there. We know who they are. They have been notified. Many of them have been convicted. We have verdicts from an Article 3, Amendment 7 court of record, a civilian common law court of record. So here we are now. We, on Oregon, cannot make it happen by ourselves. We have to have the several states with us. We have to have a quorum of the several states. That means that the people on the other several states, 32 of them, have to have a social compact and become the provisional government on their state. Now, all of the people that I've been able to find, with the exception of the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly, are in the business of helping people help themselves get out of trouble with the state or the feds. That's their business. They're doing a favor for money to help other sovereign Americans on the other states that are not states. Their color of law, state of the state, a state of Minnesota, number 32, which does not have a social compact. Therefore, they do not have a provisional government. Therefore, they do not have constitutional authority to do anything but write letters, beat on drums, blow horns, wave flags, and make a nuisance of themselves. Make it so difficult for the court that the court would rather not fight it and dismiss it and get a dismissal. They free up one at a time for money. Everybody's got to work and make a living. I understand that perfectly well. However, if your method of freeing up all of us involves figuring out a way to write paper and file it, write letters, cause trouble, and make it more difficult to convict than it is to turn loose, you can do it by onesies. Not that difficult. You see it happening all around. But they have to form a social compact and they have to have an Article 1, Section 1 provisional government to do the job. And the job is not finding a way to sell your service to somebody that's in trouble to get them out. That's not the solution. The solution is a social compact and do the work. It's not that difficult. We do not have one rocket scientist in our group. We got some smart people, got some dedicated people, and we work hard at it. And we've been successful. But that's only Oregon. We have to have 20 states, and it has to include South Carolina to return to a constitutional Republican form of government. I was reading a document yesterday, and they were talking about Article 4, Section 4 in the Constitution that guarantees a constitutional Republican form of government for all of us on all the states. And that's nice. That's good. Richard Mack was who wrote that paper up that I read. However, SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States of Washington District of Columbia, Inc., has declared that Article 4, Section 4 is not the responsibility of the United States. Well, of course not. The current United States is a color of law entity and has nothing to do with our Constitution. It has to do with their bogus Constitution. There's a difference. It's just like on Oregon. The judiciary of Article 1, pardon me, the judiciary of Article 7 amended is not the judiciary of Article 7 original. And they provide a color of law amended constitution and have since 1910. And if you don't know, that's your problem. In their law form, he who can be deceived, let him. That's how they work. I was talking with Phil Dollison, Deputy Marshal, Southern Oregon. He has a granddaughter that's a bar attorney. I have a granddaughter that's a bar attorney. His is in California, and so is mine. Neither one of them will talk to their grandfather. Something's wrong when your granddaughter won't talk to you. And the only reason she won't talk to you is because we know what bar attorneys are, and they don't want to have to face up to it. They'll stay away from us. They'll not communicate with us. And we're finding the same thing with those attorneys that are not family to us. And if we're finding that on Oregon, it's there in the other 32 states also. So this is to all of those entities that earn money helping people deal with the color of law de facto incorporated governance. Good that you're doing that. But at the same time, find a way to form a social compact so that you can become the lawful, legitimate, de jure provisional government on your state. When we have a quorum, we can return to the United States of America in Congress assembled and take care of the business that we have to take care of. And I yield.
They do not want to let go of this. They do not intend on losing here. And we do not intend giving it back to them.
And then the bullets started flying. And then he jumps out of the car. And he's got both his hands up. And he got out of the car, and he had his hands in the air. He's like, just shoot me then. This is what you want, to shoot me. And they did. They shot him dead. With his hands in the air, and I saw it. I swear to God. He was just walking with his hands in the air. And they shot him. And they shot him dead, and then after he was down on the ground, they shot him 3 more times.